Captaining a crew of carefully developed pirates through procedurally generated, progressively more challenging roguelike raids is the goal here in Rogue Waters. Each time using both Naval Combat and the crew versus crew skirmish to earn more loot, progress the story and/or upgrade that crew of yours. Thanks to Tripwire Presents for sponsoring this video and granting me early access. You can download Rogue Waters right now using that handy little link down below. Now let's get on with the show. We begin with starting a raid. This will be the core, repeatable, and procedurally generated roguelike element of the game. And before you set sail, there are a couple of things you might want to adjust. The first one, the challenge tier, aka the difficulty. This will impact the overall reward from the raid, and also each raid will have its own modifier. Some, like the one in the center, will be tied to the main story. Others are optional. Perhaps you use them to grind up for some extra gear or cash, or maybe just looking for a different adventure. In the beginning, you'll usually be tasked with something like a decision between gold and an item, and then it's time to set sail with your crew, who are very important to the combat in this game, and we'll return to them again very soon. As you set sail, in between each individual battle, you'll be able to kit out your crew with gear that you might pick up along the way. This gear will last the duration of a raid and reward you upon completing a raid. However, there's more to unpack here. It's not just fighting that will carry you through. No. There are many different layers to each raid. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that there are different pathways, each one unlocking potentially unknown events, story or narrative events, as well as plenty of opportunities to fight. So let's turn to combat now. Each fight will begin with Naval Combat, taking place over 3 different turns or rounds, where you'll spend your combat points, and these are also, by the way, upgradable, so you can start with more than the default 2, so long as you can work your way up to them. Across the 3 rounds, you'll use your cannons to try and destroy theirs, or perhaps their crew modifiers, or maybe take aim at the crew themselves. Destroying the modifiers will obviously weaken the enemy, as these things can be anything from extra health, additional movement, you name it, they've got it. Their cannons, however, are also a major threat, as they'll take out your modifiers, or your crew. My general approach is to try and take down their cannons first, and then focus on the modifiers that give their crew extra health, or allow them to regenerate health each turn. Regardless of how you play it, there's a little bit of luck involved, and of course how your ship is kitted out, the kind of rewards that you pick up at the beginning, as well as throughout a raid, have a massive impact, trust me, a huge impact on this first phase. But it is just the first phase of combat, for it is the generally, but not always melee, the skirmish combat, where this game truly shines. At each opportunity to fight throughout a raid, you'll be able to send your crew in. First off, deploying them within the deployment zone, and probably taking a look around the battlefield, in this case, the deck of the enemy ship. You want to look at where the enemy is, the type of pirates that you're facing, because each one will have their own unique attacking style, ability, range, strength, and health. And crucially, the obstacles, whether spiky or otherwise on the map. Now it's time to turn to the actual fighting, where things like fencing, a unit that's attacked will generally move backwards. Bumping, you can bump an opponent into an obstacle, causing extra damage and displacing them. If they have nowhere to retreat, even more damage is done, and perhaps you might want to send them colliding into another unit. Those are just a few examples of some of the many different movement, location-based, physics-based combat that plays out in this game. It is really all about where you position your units, how you use the map. Here, for example, I'm going to use this low-hanging rope to swing across this unit and get a stab at the one that I'm really truly worried about, the hammerhead unit, which swings back at me every time I hit it. I want to take it out quickly, so I beeline, focus in, using extra units like Captain Cutter's shot to finally displace the unit. And this is where you'll probably start to see the full roguelike, rogue-lite elements start to play out. For upon completion of a successful battle, you might just pick up some extra loot, as well as some gold. which you could spend during this raid, during this run, perhaps at one of the story events or merchants you might happen across, or you could save it for an upgrade, an overall standard starting upgrade down the line. The gear that you pick up, whether it's items for your crew or extra cannons for your ship, won't carry through to future raids. However, it will provide some very useful currency that you can use to unlock those fundamental upgrades, standard starting upgrades. This is where the loop is completed. Through each victory within a raid, you pick up some sweet gear, hopefully enough extra strength, health, armor, and abilities to carry you through to the end of the raid. If you don't make it all the way through, don't worry, you'll still pick up some gold and blueprints that you'll be able to spend on upgrades. But really, of course, it's about getting the best gear possible in order to make it down the end of that very branching and honestly at times very dangerous pathway. Obviously, you can set the overall danger level depending on the challenge level or difficulty you might have selected at the start. And thankfully, the game allows you to change this each raid. So if you find you've set it a little bit too difficult at first, don't worry, you can come back, reduce it down, and maybe progress through the story a little bit more. However, this game, Rogue Waters, offers a little bit more. It's not just the naval combat and the skirmishes, but what happens at the end of a raid, and some of the more interesting things, such as boss fights, and the powers that you can muster up from the sea. Throughout the story, you'll face some recurring bosses, and thankfully, your characters, your crew, won't ever perish. If they do unfortunately perish during a fight, don't worry, you'll be able to bring them back in a future fight. However, they may be wounded. And we'll return to this in a moment as my crew get brutally wounded during this boss fight. I'm able to bring in some extra crewmates, some mates. These guys may not be as good as my hand-selected crew members, but as you bring them in and replenish, they might just be the extra hands on deck that you need to win the fight. Likewise, the powers from the sea, like displacing enemies or absolutely annihilating them with a giant tentacle, also provide a little extra boost to get you across the line, this being the final victory screen, where you get experience for your crew. Blueprints and glass, the latter two can be spent here at the hub. And this is where, after you complete a raid, you'll be able to bring everything together and pick up some longer term bonuses, like in the workshop, for example, where bam, we'll spend this precious income on upgrades, like additional upgrade for those sea monster powers, perhaps extra benefits for the crew, or extra benefits to tack on to the ship down here in the shipyard. Another location in the central hub where we can add extra cannons and modules that we might pick up in the workshop. The third location in the hub, where you can spend your blueprints on starting gold upgrades, extra command points for naval battles perhaps, or maybe head to the equipment tab and pick up that sweet extra starting cannon, which might just give you the edge to completely sway an entire raid. And finally, of course, we have to think about the tavern. This is where we'll recruit our new crew members, and ultimately, in the crew quarters, equip them out, fit them out, maybe allow them to rest and recover from wounds that they might have picked up from previous raids, or upgrade them, giving them new abilities, extra health, movement, extra weapons, you name it, it's all here. And all of this stuff that you assign to the crew or the starting cannon on the ship, that will carry through the story missions, through the extra missions, through your entire campaign. So you get that sweet element of gaining individual experience, leveling people up over the long term, as well as focusing in on individual raids, either to progress a story or maybe to just pick up some more of that currency to further better your crew. Thank you very much for joining me today in Rogue Waters. Again, a reminder, this was a sponsored video and you can check out Rogue Waters down below. I'd highly encourage you to click through that link and give the game a look. Even though it's a sponsored video, I think the game is pretty reasonably priced considering the immense replayability that comes from this sort of tactical RPG, blending turn-based tactics with some, I think, very sweet and again, very replayable roguelite elements. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.